So good evening, welcome to everyone that's here now, and thank you for joining us for our fifth and final webinar in our Misbehaviour or Misunderstood Season 2 series. My name's Nicola McDonald and I'm the Animal Welfare Operations Officer at Companion Animals New Zealand. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I'd just like to highlight a few things about the animal behaviour and training industry in New Zealand. So if you're signing in as a pet owner tonight, you may not realise that the animal behaviour industry in New Zealand is unregulated. This means that anyone can call themselves a trainer or behaviourist, regardless of qualifications or methods. So while many practitioners are highly skilled, some rely on outdated or harmful approaches. And that's why our CANS accreditation scheme really matters. Accredited professionals under the scheme must use humane, welfare-focused methods, communicate honestly, and commit to ongoing professional development. So this gives pet owners confidence that they're working with someone skilled and ethical. So if you're seeking help with your dog's behaviour, look for a CANS accredited trainer. And if you're a professional using modern animal behaviour practice, we'd love to see you join our scheme. So please contact us to learn more. Tonight's webinar is titled Effective Strategies for Working with Shy, Anxious and Fearful Dogs. So if you've ever found it challenging to help a dog feel safe within a shelter, a foster home or forever home, then tonight's session is especially for you. Tonight's speaker is Debbie Jacobs from the US, who has generously offered her time to present to us. I first met Debbie in February at the Kiwi Vet Behaviour Summer Conference, where her inspiring talk left such an impression, and we invited her to join our webinar series. Because of the time difference making it difficult for Debbie to be here live tonight, we recorded her talk last month. Some of our early webinar registrants submitted questions for Debbie to answer, and she addresses a few of those in this session. Also, to answer any behaviour-related questions as they come through tonight, I'm delighted to welcome back Dr. Jess Beer. And many of you will remember Jess from webinar 3 on older pets and cognitive decline. She's an accredited behaviour veterinarian and the founder and director of Kiwi Vet Behaviour in Auckland. So thanks for being here, Jess. So feel free to drop questions in that Q&A feature as they come to mind during Debbie's presentation. Let me introduce Debbie Jacobs. Debbie is a certified professional dog trainer and a registered behaviour technician with the Behaviour Analysis Certification Board in the US. She's the creator of fearfuldogs.com and the author of A Guide to Living with and Training a Fearful Dog. Her online course, The Essentials of Applied Behaviour Analysis for Serious Animal Trainers, is available at fearfuldogs.thinkific.com. Debbie lives in Vermont and offers both in-person training and online consultations for dog owners, animal caregivers, and welfare professionals. She also hosts workshops and seminars at Lemon's Hope, which is a sanctuary for domestic farm animals. Debbie brings a wealth of experience in working with fearful and at-risk dogs. So let's get started. I'm going to pull up Debbie's presentation.
Okay, thank you. Great to be here. So I've added the term aggression to the title of this presentation because as far as behavior goes, aggression is among the least tolerated by people. And it's so often why people seek out professional help for their dogs. And as with other terms, all of these terms are descriptors of behavior. They are not characteristics or traits of a particular animal. So I've been a certified professional dog trainer for close to 20 years, certified through the Certification Council of Professional Dog Trainers, an independent testing organization in the US. Otherwise, dog training is basically an unregulated industry. And we're hoping that that will change, but for now, this is one of the means that we have of actually being tested on our knowledge and our skills by an independent body. Prior to the pandemic, I was a certified registered behavioral technician by the Behavior Analysis Certification Board. And I worked in a clinical setting with children who were diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And I created the fearfuldogs.com website in the early 2000s, and I wrote a guide to living with and training a fearful dog in 2007. I also compiled a collection of blog posts in Does My Dog Need Prozac? And the answer is yes, he did. And I have trained with some of the most experienced animal trainers in the world, including seminars and chicken camps with Bob Bailey. I also attended Jean Donaldson's Academy for Dog Trainers. I've completed Susan Friedman's Living and Learning with Animals course and spent time at Natural Encounters training facility in Florida, where birds were trained for performances at Disney. I also live in a region of the US that is rich in training resources and have attended seminars and workshops with many of the familiar names in dog training. The information I'm sharing with you today is not my special brand of dog training. It is based on the robust and evidence-based science of behavior. A critical concept of behavior that you need to get your head around is that the environment controls behavior. It's 4 words, but it contains powerful knowledge. If you want to change behavior, change the environment. For trainers, this means changing our own behavior as we are part of the animal's environment. The rat is always right. What we can conclude from the environmental control of behavior is, as Skinner says, the rat is always right. This means that they are doing exactly what they can do, what they know to do, and what they have been reinforced for doing in the past. We can lose language like they're being stubborn or jealous. They are doing the best that they can. We can categorize the type of control the environment has on behavior into 2 categories, aversive and appetitive. Appetitive control works because it produces outcomes the animal likes. Aversive control works because it provides the animal with the opportunity to escape or avoid something it doesn't. Our goal when working with any animal, but especially those displaying challenging behavior, is find what makes them happy. Find their joy. For those who've experienced extreme neglect, deprivation, abuse, or trauma, we may need to start by removing anything they perceive as a threat to them. Too many of them haven't learned that they can access joy in their lives, and they spend too much time trying to protect themselves. It's really a miserable way to live. We start by building a positive and trusting relationship with them. And this is probably something you've already got a lot of experience doing, and you're probably really good at it. I'm talking about severe problem behavior, not, my dog jumps on people to greet them when they're happy and they're wearing white pants. Behaviors we may not like, but they're not really severe problem behavior. We need to remember that it's not inevitable within a certain population or breed of dogs. Severe problem behavior does not occur in a vacuum. Severe problem behavior develops as a result of reinforcement. In other words, it worked. And rather than focusing on ending the problem behavior, we focus on teaching alternative behaviors that also work that we like better. And failure to address severe problem behavior leads to increased euthanasia rates and a lower quality of life for both the dog and the people who have to live with them. And remember, severe problem behavior is communication. We want to find ways to use good outcomes to end problem behavior. We can interrupt, distract, or ask for another behavior. Provide what the dog wants, especially if it's asking for distance or space or to be left alone, or when you think a behavior is dangerous or has the potential to become dangerous. Give them what they're asking for. And we can train without needing to experience the problem behavior. And this should be our goal. And good trainers never need to see or produce the unwanted behavior in order to train. And in a perfect world, which we don't live in, but in that perfect world, it never would. We would never see it again. Someone would come to us with a problem behavior, and we could say, we understand, we're going to train, and we're never going to see that behavior in our training. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I call the behavior braid, and it was just a way that I came up with to talk about the three pieces, the three parts that I think are important to get our heads around and learn about training. And they're central to what we do. They're not separate like a braid. They usually are occurring at the same time. The first thing is the animal needs to feel safe. We need to create an environment in which the animal is ready and happy to learn. So they need to feel safe. We need to create that environment so that they don't need to perform the problem behavior, especially if it's one that we identify as based on coming from fear or aggression. We need to bring the joy into their life, or at the very least, relief from any fear or anxiety they might be experiencing. And we want to make sure that space is filled with the things that they love. The third thing we do is we create good associations with anything the animal is going to have to routinely interact with or be exposed to. And remember, we never need to evoke a problem behavior in order to train them, but we need to help them learn that these things that are and events that occur in their life, which seem to evoke the behaviors that we don't like, are actually okay and they're safe. Keep in mind that many of these animals have experienced neglect, abuse, deprivation, or other adverse experiences, and we should act, even if we don't know that they have, we should act as though they have. So this is for folks who are trainers. What I am referring to is classical counter-conditioning. The third thing, and I think it happens to be, I think it's really where the magic happens. And it's not magic that's happening, but it really makes all the difference when we address our training, not as eliminating problem behavior, but building skills. And we train using food and fun. And these skills that we teach the animal provide them the ability to control their environment. We sometimes call this empowering or empowerment. They learn that through their behavior, they can make good things happen. Here are three words that are really important. Behavior is lawful. This means we don't have to make up stuff about why dogs are doing things. If we have enough information about the conditions under which we see a behavior, we can, with a high degree of certainty, predict when and where or if we'll see that behavior again. Behavior operates on the environment to create outcomes the dog wants. For the trainers in the group, we're talking about operant conditioning. Their behavior gets them access to good stuff. Their behavior helps them avoid or get away from bad stuff. And often there are more than one reason. There are multiple outcomes that the animal can access through their behavior. It's not necessarily always just one thing, though it isn't unusual to see among our dogs who we've identified as fearful, anxious, aggressive, shy, whatever terms we're using. It's not unusual to see those animals spending most of their time avoiding or escaping from things that scare them. We need to be able to train efficiently. You need to determine what you want them to do. You need to be clear and specific. Exactly. Not what I don't want you to do, but what I do want you to do instead that would be acceptable. And then we use different types of training. Commonly we use shaping behavior by reinforcing incremental approximations. It's how you learn to walk. If you are able to walk, you started off crawling. And then as you developed, you then could pull yourself up and stand, and then you could start to take steps, and you learned how to balance, and then you started walking. And we want to make sure that we can set our animals up for success. So this is not a how to train webinar. Seriously, that takes lots and lots of practice, hands-on practice of training. It is a mechanical skill, and we use those skills and apply them based on what we know about how behavior works. And there is a need for more trainers to have both a solid understanding of how behavior works along with the physical mechanical skills that you can teach. You can deliver reinforcement and not need to use force, fear, or threats in your training. Behavior matches reinforcement. If a behavior has been reinforced enough under certain conditions, we can predict whether or not it will be repeated. And this is actually a law. It's called the matching law. And you don't need to know the mathematical formula, but it is important that you know that behaviors that are reinforced a lot, we will see them a lot. And if there are behaviors that you'd like to see a lot, make sure you reinforce them a lot. I wanted to take some time to address some of the questions that folks had, because I know that's important. And one of the questions was, how can I help a fearful dog feel safer during routine or daily activities? And it's a great question. It's one of the questions that when I hear it makes me feel so happy to be part of a community that's actually looking for answers to help dogs feel safer. So, as always, it depends on the dog. One of the first things that I look at is if the dogs have been with an owner or have been worked with a volunteer or a foster home. What ways has the handler found to minimize behaviors that look like the animal isn't feeling scared or that the animal isn't feeling safe? And that's where I like to start, because it's the person who interacts with the dog a lot, especially if they have any kind of experience and have developed an understanding of dog body language. How have they worked with the dog, and they'll often tell me, oh, the dog goes, this is what the dog always does. I just need to do this. I need to walk the dog outside, or I need to meet people outside before they come in the house. And people have come up with different strategies. And so I look at the ways that the owners or the handlers have found to help the dog feel safe. And then we go from there. It also helps me understand what it is that the dog isn't actually feeling safe about. We need to give them safe spaces that they can count on. And those are spaces where they know they are safe 100% of the time. And this can be challenging. It can be challenging because sometimes we have to move dogs. So we do the best that we can. We need to create good associations with the objects, events, and locations that they're going to interact with routinely. That's one of the ways we help them. And of course, the other way, which I see I didn't list here, but it is that third strand of the braid that I talked about, which is we give them the skills to interact with their environment. We don't send novice firefighters into burning buildings without teaching them what they need to do. It's not fair. And that's how we train individuals to behave successfully within those environments where maybe it's a little bit upsetting, maybe it's a little bit scary, but they know exactly what they're supposed to do. And obviously, this requires someone who knows how to train that way. It's also important to talk to a vet or a vet behaviorist about medications that can help decrease chronic anxiety, or perhaps address specific phobias or sensitivities that a dog might be experiencing that, as a trainer, I may not be able to mitigate. All right, another good question. What is the best way to respond when a fearful dog reacts to strangers or other dogs with aggression, inhibition, or fleeing? And I would say the best way to respond is to get them out of the deep end of the pool. We don't give lessons to people who are actively drowning. It's not the time to start shouting at them to kick their feet. When we have a dog who is behaving in a way that was described as what we often talk about as the F's, the freezing, fleeing, fighting responses, those are autonomic nervous system responses to being afraid. We don't start giving training lessons to an individual who is basically working on autopilot as far as protecting themselves go. So get them out of the pool, get them back to a place that they feel safe, and then go back to creating good associations with people and other dogs, and give them the skills they need in order to feel safe and be safe under those conditions. What do they do? We are very clear and very specific, and it's not usually that difficult. Most of the time, I train animals what I call behavior A, attention. Pay attention to me. When they see something that they're worried about, or they're scared of, or they're not sure what's going to happen, I need them to be able to look at me, pay attention to me quickly, easily, happily, and then I'll take it from there. We may either decide to practice a skill, or we may just get the heck out of Dodge. And this is a really common question. I hear this a lot. How do I differentiate between fear, anxiety, shyness, aggression, etc., whatever other terms people use for it? And will I have to respond differently to the dogs based on this? And it's kind of it's sort of a trick question. But let's just start with, what would you rather the dog do instead of what they are doing that you are calling fearful, shy, anxious, or aggressive? Just stop worrying about whether or not it's fearful, shy, anxious, or aggressive behavior. What would you rather they do instead of any of those things? So the short answer to the question is, yeah, you'll have to respond differently to them, but it will be based on what the alternative behavior you want the dog to perform is. And there's always a good chance that it's the same behavior that can be used regardless of whether you're saying the dog is fearful, shy, or aggressive. What do you want the dog to do? Well, I want them to come to me. I want them to look at me. I want them to get behind me. I want them to respond to the leash pressure and walk away with me. So again, I would like you to flip your thinking around, and instead of thinking about labeling a behavior and focusing on ending the behavior, you think about, what does this dog need to do? And then train it. This is another common question. Can owners reinforce fear-based behaviors, and how can we support owners? So I had created some cartoons years ago. Don't worry, honey, next time mommy won't let that mean old doctor offer you candy and reinforce your fear of hospitals. If you want to reinforce fear, this is one way to do it. Run, it's going to kill you. And then it is likely that you will reinforce the animal's fear, but that's not what you're talking about. What we need to think about is, how would an owner reinforce a behavior that is in response to something scary or upsetting in the environment? Like, what would they do? They're not going to yell, run, it's going to kill you, quite likely. What most people worry about doing is petting the dog, telling them it's okay, giving them food, these kinds of things that people think, oh, you shouldn't do it because you are going to reinforce the fear by telling the dog everything's fine, petting them on the head, giving them a piece of cheese. But think about it. What is the dog trying to make happen when they behave in a way that we would describe as fearful or aggressive? Now we are looking at the function of the fearful or aggressive behavior, which is usually, they're not doing it to get a piece of cheese or a pat on the head or be told that everything is okay. The function of the behavior, of that behavior that we're calling aggressive or fearful, is usually just to be left alone. And it makes sense to reinforce that behavior so that it doesn't escalate. So the point is, they are not behaving to get a piece of cheese. If they are behaving a certain way to get a piece of cheese, then you've got a good trick. If they are behaving in a fearful or aggressive way to increase distance, then you're dealing with fear or aggression, and it's usually that the function of it is just leave me alone, go away. And again, we do want to reinforce that behavior. By that I mean, whatever they are doing needs to work. If a dog growls at me, I want them to know that that growl is all they have to do. Yes, I hear you. Remember, it's communication. You're asking me to leave you alone. And you know what? I'm going to leave you alone. That way, I don't have to get a bite or a lunge or some escalation in that display of behavior. Many dogs learn big displays of scary behavior, and it's really just, they've just had to do it in order for people to listen. Leave me alone. I don't want you to touch me. Now, keep in mind that this is not where we leave it. This is not where we end. But we need to be certain that we do not force the dog to up their game, because that's when people start getting scared and people start getting injured, and that doesn't work. Another question here. This is a very specific question, and it's a really interesting question, I think, and it's a fairly routine. And I don't mean that in a sort of discounting the question, but it's pretty common. Two female 18-month-old mini schnauzers, lovely dogs, love them. I've had clients with them, and I think they're fabulous little dogs. One of them initiates fights with the other, and it also barks at other dogs on walks. It also stays very close to the owner. It's described as a lap dog. It sleeps on the bed. Also happens to urinate in the house routinely, despite access to a cat door. Both dogs are loved and adored and adorable, and the owner would rather not have to rehome either one. These are tough cases for us, and by the last question about the last comment about not wanting to rehome either one, what it tells me is that that was probably suggested to them. And that's not unusual. It's not unusual for us, for trainers, to say when we have a household with two females that are fighting, that we would recommend one solution is to rehome the easier dog. Because they will be easier to rehome. The dog who's not picking fights with the other dog, the dog that's not barking at dogs on walk. Sorry, it doesn't make for good, it's not good to put in the ad to try to get somebody to adopt a dog who behaves that way. But the other dog may be a perfectly lovely, easy to manage dog. So that's why that's often recommended. And then that in itself can solve the problem. All right. So when I see something like that, I look at the information that I've gotten and I think, well, what's relevant information and what isn't? And if I'm not sure, I would get more information. One thing, sometimes the idea that the dog sleeps on the bed, sometimes people think that is that they shouldn't let dogs on the furniture. I often have clients say to me, I know I shouldn't let them on the couch, but I do. And I say, I let my dogs on the couch. I have stairs leading up to my bed for the dogs that can't jump. So you want your dogs to sleep on the bed, that's fine. So some information may not be relevant, and we need to be careful about what we tend to focus on and what is important, what isn't. What are behaviors we routinely see? And in this case, we often see that kind of female-female fighting. It's not uncommon, and it's not uncommon at this age. Might it go away on its own? It might, but it may not be a fun process, especially, well, for either dog. Both dogs seem to be suffering to a certain extent. The dog that's not feeling safe enough or is feeling whatever it's experiencing that's leading to it behaving aggressively. And then we have this other dog who's, being attacked. So then we think, well, what are the skills that need to be trained? Well, we need to be able to have a dog who can be around another dog under any kind of conditions, because we don't really know when and where the fights are tending to start. We generally will start with extreme management. There are plenty of people out there who have two dogs that don't get along, who manage them impressively. They go, no, the dogs are never out alone together at the same time. Some of them are never out together at all. So they're constantly swapping between crates or certain rooms, and they're managing them both separately. And that is, that's how we want to start, because we really would like to not see that behavior, the aggressive behavior or the fighting occur. The other one was house training, which is, what is the skill that needs to be trained? Sometimes people are a little bit unaware that just because dogs have access to going out, that they have actually learned that that's what they should do. to go outside. They, people often ask me, the dog doesn't come to the door. It doesn't go to the door. It doesn't tell me it needs to go out. No, it doesn't. The dog should just be taken out routinely. We shouldn't rely on the dog making those kind of decisions because sometimes they make mistakes and then they can get into bad habits about it. And so again, we would ask questions, and house training is it can seem not such a big deal compared to aggression, but I'll tell you what, having dogs that are not house trained isn't any fun. So training dogs to go outside and to stop using the inside as a toilet just really needs to be trained. And I wouldn't count on the dog knowing that it should use the cat door to go out. I would still be managing the dog regularly, taking them out. And who knows, maybe one day they will start to use the dog door, and that would be the cat door, and that would be great. And we could teach them to go, make sure that they go in and out happily and easily so that we know that that's not part of the problem. We want to look at the dogs and assess, is there fear involved? Is the dog who's behaving aggressively, seems to be initiating things, is there fear involved for them? How's the other one holding up? Is the one who's getting picked on, is that one's life now being seriously impacted? Are both dogs suffering? And it looks like I've left off a little bit here in this last one. Might there be a home for the one being attacked where she could not only not have to worry every day about being picked on and being attacked, but where there might even be another dog that they could enjoy being with and they could have fun with, and that life could be better? And I'm not saying that this is how it should be done. A good trainer could work with these two dogs and see what we could get sorted out. But I know myself, for many years I thought, my house was the best home for any dog out there. And then I got some dogs and I realized there's better homes out there for my dogs. I had a border collie who would have really preferred to have lived as either a sport dog or a herding dog. And that's not what he got from me. He got a good life and I adored him, and he was, but seriously, if he could be asked that he could go to somebody who would play frisbee with him all day or let him go outside and herd sheep, I know what choice he would make. So that's just something else to keep in mind, because sometimes we tend to focus on what we think the dogs are feeling, and maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong. And then sometimes we think about what we want, which is okay too, but it sometimes we have to, move beyond that and consider what might be better for these animals, especially if we don't have a trainer who is going to be able to do the training. So, those are big questions, because otherwise, we may be just living with problems that don't get any better, are chronic, and everybody's life is impacted, and especially the owner's life, because it's not easy to live with that. So those are just some thoughts that question prompted to me. So I don't know whether you have any other questions, Nick, if you want to ask me. I think I don't know how much time we have left. I do have some other videos that I could share if you want to see a video or two, and I'm happy to do that too.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think we will do that. We do have another 10 minutes. I did have one question. I just wondered if you think a lot of dog owners misunderstand what it is their dogs are actually fearful of. Are they misinterpreting their dog's fearful behavior potentially? Is this something you've seen?
Um, I'm sure that it happens. I'm sure there are situations where it's very hard to identify it, because it may be occurring within a certain environment. And so the scary thing gets lost to us, and also because of dogs, the way the dog's kind of worldview, where they may see things differently, they hear things differently, they smell things differently. So we may have a dog who seems to be afraid of going into a particular room. And we think, oh, they're afraid of that room. But really, what they were afraid of is that somebody let off fireworks outside the house the day that they were in that room. So we can be confused in that way. So it is a really good thing to consider. In other cases, people can generally see if it's very specific, afraid of strangers, afraid of men, afraid of other dogs, loud noises, things like that, maybe being alone, separation anxiety. Some things people get and they're spot on. They can tell me the things that scare their dog, and they can tell me exactly what they do to help the dog. But then there are those other things, like maybe you have some examples too, but that you're inferring that maybe it's what we notice, not what they notice, and what's important is what they notice.
Yeah, yeah. No, I just think it's so interesting. I think we need to get a lot better at reading dog body language. So that's why I was asking. Yeah, yeah. I
Definitely.
think if you had some videos to share, that would be really great.
Okay, so I'm going to share the videos that I'm going to share are about training. I said this wasn't a training video, but I think it's really helpful because I don't think many pet owners, and I was a pet owner, so I'm not saying it in any derogatory way, or foster caregivers, whoever is out there with the dog, have actually ever watched trainers train. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I will start to share. So this video here is a little dog who comes and boards with me. This is Scout. Scout is a Cavalier King Charles. And this is our third session together. And let me just see, I've written some notes as to how long. This was our third session. And by this lesson, we'd had 14 minutes of training. So this is session number 3 for a downstay, and I am following a training plan. So let me see if I can make this play. So he's supposed to stay in the down. He had been at the end of our last session. You can see he has a sit and he has a hand signal for a down. I'm actually having to do a little bigger hand signal for him at the start of this session. He's needing a little bit of help. And so I'm going to remind him that staying in this position, oops, he stands up. He's not going to get any treats for that. And we're going to have to review. So I'm going to have to make it easier for him. So rather than go all the way behind him, which is when they often pop up, I am just going to walk back behind him and then helping him out by feeding him an extra little treat to keep him in position. Remember, I want him to be successful. Every time he gets it wrong, his rate of reinforcement is dropping. And when the rate of reinforcement drops low enough, they leave. They get up and they walk away and go look for better, greener pastures somewhere else. So I did that for a certain number of repetitions. It should have been 5 repetitions, and he got it. So now I'm going to up it again where I've walked completely behind him. I've removed that extra little treat that I used to reach over to keep him into position. That treat is no longer necessary. And he is staying in place. And I'm doing this multiple times. Many people learn to train downstays by getting in front of the dog, putting their hand up, telling him to stay, and then they walk backwards. Oops, he got up again. He made a mistake. There's no punishment. You just don't get paid. And then we start again. And you'll notice I haven't told him to stay. I haven't said a word. Most dogs pay attention to our body language. So again, I want to make sure that he is, before I move on to the next step in the training plan, which you'll see, I want to make sure he has this walk that where I step behind him completely without popping up. And this is a series of videos I made for a humane society on the island of Vieques, which is in the Caribbean near Puerto Rico. And there you go, full walk around. And again, I'm not just going to do it once, I'm going to do it again. And I'm just waiting to make sure that he's not distracted by the food, that he can observe me moving so that he just stays in place. So now I'm going to start changing things around. And all he needs to do is stay in position. This is when I imagine the dogs that I'm training think, I am living with a complete fool. All I need to do is stay here and she will keep delivering me food, and I will. And I'm walking a little bit faster, a little bit more erratic. What do I do? What do I need to do? I just need to stay in place. So that's my little scout. He's such a good, and I want to share, how much time have we got now?
Oh, we can do one more. Just on that, I really like
Yeah.
the fact that you mentioned a training diary. I think it would be really great if owners did that, because a lot of owners think they don't have time, but really, how much time per day?
Yeah,
So
that was,
it's
yep,
not that
that was,
long, is it?
exactly. So I have it down. The first session was 7 minutes and 20 seconds. The second session was 6 minutes and 33 seconds. And the third session that you just watched was 4 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah.
And he has it in that space. We would then take it on the road. We may go other places and practice, and he may need reviews, but that's okay. There are some people who've had a dog for 5 years and they've never taught it a downstay. They never were able to get a downstay. And in under 20 minutes, here you go. Here's a dog who's learned it downstay. Okay, I'm going to, let's see. Oh, let me go back to my, gotta go back to my soups. This is okay, got it up. So this is one I call it Don't Take Behavior for Granted. This is Reggie. Reggie was also boarding with me, and Reggie was what we call a transport dog. He had been shipped up from shelters in the southern parts of the United States.
So little Reggie seems to be cold, so I'm gonna
Can you hear the narration?
see if I can get a jacket on him. What a good
Okay.
boy he is. He's sitting so nicely. So let me give him a little treat for sitting nicely. And then he's used to his harness, but I'm gonna really make it even better by giving him a little treat for sticking his head in. Oh, he's so good. He really is a good boy. Now, Oh my gosh. I've got this tied on. Okay, well, that works. And I've got to manipulate his leg. Okay, so I'm going to pay him for letting me do that because that ain't nothing. And then I'm going to clip it on, snap, that ain't nothing. Okay, his collar's out. Let's make sure his regular collar's out. So I'm going to mess with that a little bit. And I'm going to pay for that. This is just little pieces of his kibble. I've got another few bits in there. Now, let's try this. Now, this is, oops, sorry, bud. Now, let's see about this one. Might be easiest to put on. I have a couple of jackets here. Let me get this leash through the hole here. We'll do this. Let's get this out of the way. Oh dear, got a knot here. Oh, at some point you stop worrying about knots in your clotheslines, but for now I'm still taking out knots. But after a while you get over it. Okay, so this has to go over his head and then under his belly. Okay, you're a good boy. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. There's a treat. Oh my gosh, there's his head through there. Oh, I had to handle his ears. Good, I'm going to do that. Good, good, good. Now I'm going to do this. This has to go under his belly. I think he's a little bit, this was Nibbles. And I think he's a little bit skinnier than Nibbles. Oh, it's about right. Maybe a little bit less over here. How's that? How's the Velcro? Good. And now we're all, oh, isn't that nice? Now maybe, oops, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Good job. I also have another one. This was Yogi's. It's all fleece. Had to have an extension put on it when he got a little chubby. But anyhow, okay. So sit. Good boy. That's a good boy. Nice job. And we'll move this down a bit. Okay. Now, oops, hang on. What have I got here? What? Oh, right. Pull this through. Oh, my heavens. It is. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. That's a good boy. Oh, such a good dog he is. So good. Oh, I put the thing on too soon. Okay. All right. So then I pay for that. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work that he just did for me right there. Okay. So now I think we'll see if he'll head down the road and we'll take a little walk and hopefully he won't be cold because I think my little friend was cold, weren't you? Yes, he was.
So the point of that was just to see, for folks to see how much reinforcement I use, and I'm paying attention. You can see that he's sitting there, he's staying, he's being compliant, he's doing everything I'm asking him to do, and I don't want to take it for granted. I want to make sure that he learns that it's always worth hanging around and he's being handled, and being handled is safe. So I just show that one for folks to see the amount of reinforcement. And I've got to show you one more. It's only 37 seconds. I want to share it with you folks because of where I live here in New England. We have little animals that live in our yards. They are little rodents. We call them chipmunks. And since I haven't had a dog anymore, I have been working with the chipmunks in my yard. And in this case, I was training this chipmunk to grab my finger in order to get the treats. So as soon as it reached up and it grabbed my finger, it got access to the treats. And for some of the chipmunks, they'll do it multiple times in a row, and I can just sit there and deliver. They'll turn around and grab my finger, and I'll deliver them seeds. And I know how to do that because behavior is lawful and it's lawful across species. So any animal that you're working with can be trained using shaping, incremental approximations of behavior, and providing reinforcement.
Oh, that's so lovely. I love that video. Thank you. Debbie, with harness anxiety, do you find some dogs are that fearful of the harness, they'll actually run away as soon as the harness comes out? And then you need to really train from the very, very start to even just get them near the harness. They will go and hide. Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah. Well, again, I would have a variety of things. I would have a training plan,
Mhm.
it's sort of like teaching a dog to wear a muzzle. We have a training plan, we follow it. I would also consider why the dog is afraid it doesn't like the harness. Because sometimes it may be, I mean, does the harness hurt? Is the harness uncomfortable? Are they dragged around by the harness? Or does the harness predict something is going to happen that they are afraid of? So they may not necessarily be afraid of the harness, so that's what they are responding to, but they are afraid of what it predicts is going to happen. So it's the difference between you have a dog and you hold up a leash and they love to go for walks and they jump and they can barely sit still because they can't wait because it predicts they're going to go for a walk. But if you have a dog who is afraid to go outside, and that's what the harness means to them. And so you have to differentiate. Do I have a dog who some in the owner might say, oh no, they love going for walks so long as it's on the collar or so long as they're off leash. But any part of the problem with anything that involves body handling is that it's really hard for dogs. Body handling is one of the hardest things to train, especially if they haven't had a lot of good experiences. I mean, if you raise a litter of puppies and you handle them a lot and you love on them and they get all kinds of handling, most dogs you can do like with Reggie, got to the point, his owner got to the point where he loves, he's fine having his harness put on, but I'm new to him. I'm not his owner. So I wanted to make sure that he always felt that way about it. So I used food. But if somebody has a dog and the dog is avoiding the harness, we would have a training plan. We might try a different harness so that we don't have that association with the old harness. I mean, we try different ways, but those are the things that I would think of as, yes, we would just have a training plan. And then in the interim, can we continue to walk the dog without the body harness? Because we don't want the dog to lose the opportunity to go for walks. So,
Yeah.
those are the things we have to sort through, when we're doing it. But I avoid restraint in order to train at all. If I can, I would rather not have to, have somebody hold the dog while I put it over their head or, force them.
Yeah. Yeah, and also the different types of harnesses. I think it's really important to remember that some dogs just can't cope with the over the head harness types. So in
Yeah.
that case, get the ones that you kind of click together around the
Yeah.
body. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. If we're going to use equipment and we have equipment that makes it easier for them to be successful, go with the equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. That was incredibly informative. Really, really enjoyed it. Loved the fact that you said if you want to change behavior, change the environment, including yourself. I think that's a really important statement right there. And also for us to make sure we reinforce behavior we want to see rather than focus so much on what we consider bad behavior. So, yeah. Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, do you want to mention something about your book as well?
Well, let's see. Let me see what I have here. I'll go back to my, I will send you a link for the book, for the ebook. Postage is crazy. The ebook is probably, the easiest way to do it. If folks are interested in learning more about how behavior works, I did create this course on Thinkific, ABA for Pets. Folks have access to that. It's a self-directed course. And then there's always My Fearful Dogs website where folks can get a hold of me, or they can also find all kinds of resources.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so, so much. Really enjoyed
Okay.
that.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you to Debbie Jacob for her presentation and for kindly volunteering her time to present to us on this important topic. So now's your chance to ask any questions you may have about anxious or fearful dogs. Dr. Jess is here to help with any answers. Jess, you're on mute, so I'll get you to.
I was waiting for permission.
Oh, no, you're all good. Hey, in your work at Kiwi Vet Behaviour, what's the most common type of fear that clients bring their dogs to you for?
Oh, wow. I would say generalized anxiety, and that presents in so many different forms. I think it's safe to say we have a lot of dogs who have a fear of people, so stranger aggression. And as Debbie said quite rightly, to add the term aggression into her title, it's such a common presentation that actually makes people go, oh, there is something wrong with my pet, because the more subtle signs are not noted. We do see separation anxiety. That's been a big conversation since post-COVID, actually. So that is a fear presenting behavior, and it's often missed because we're not actually there to see it. But realistically, when it comes to fear, dogs and cats, I'll throw in as well, any species can be fearful of anything. And it could be due to an experience that provoked that fear. So as Debbie was discussing, dogs that have come from a traumatic background or environment or experience, that's going to trigger fear. But we don't know necessarily what they're associating that fear with. And so we can often see a dog that displays fear towards something, but the thing they're displaying fear to isn't actually what they were afraid of. It was just present at the time of the stimulus that caused them fear. So certain smells or sounds or certain objects suddenly trigger that fear response. What else do we see as fear? There's definitely the noise phobia. There's been a lot of research now into understanding the fear of noises that a lot of dogs have. And luckily we are determining that there is physiological components to that, like chronic pain. I think we see a nice blend, shall I say? I wouldn't say a nice blend, but we do see a very broad presentation. And luckily or not, we are at the level of referral where we often see quite complicated cases where they have multiple anxiety disorders contributing to multiple fears. So it's often not just one thing. There was a question that just came through, I'm not sure if Beck saw it, that we maybe ask, which is specifically a fear that a lot of dogs have, and that's getting into the car. And I think that plays on nicely from the harness fear as well. When we're dealing with social society where a lot of the things we want to do with our dogs is jump in the car and go for a walk. And if they're scared of the car, then all of a sudden their world has been very restricted. And so car fear can come from multiple sources, I suppose. There is the fear of it itself. It could be the enclosure. It could be the sound, the vibration, the movement, the flickering of lights as you go past. And another quite common contributing factor is anxiety because of music. It's in my room. And so if they feel sick when they get in the car, then obviously they're not going to enjoy being in the car. And so I think the question, I might actually just bring it up so I can clarify. There's more questions now there. They've done some things to help. They walk to the car and then they get into the crate and it's padded. But there was a concern that she might associate the car with kids screaming. And that's a really good way of highlighting that there's a fear of a car, but it's actually because of an unpleasant experience they've had through their sensory stimulus from the kids screaming. Now, if we're looking for solutions for these kind of things, it's generally let's change their emotional response to the experience that they're having. And as Debbie quite rightly pointed out, what is the behavior we're seeing? What behavior can we train in opposition to that? And is that opposition behavior going to provide them with a better emotional feel? So we do a lot of what we call car games. So you go to the car, you hop in, you get a sausage, you hop out, you get a sausage, and we turn the car into an area where enjoyable things happen. And so we're incorporating the operant behavior, the training, the skills that Debbie's touched on, and we're seeing that counter conditioning of the emotional experience changing as well over time. And I think that's where we need to be really understanding that yes, we can manipulate, and I'll use that term because manipulating behavior, because behavior is lawful and you can absolutely control the outcomes, but recognizing that there are other learning processes going on behind that in regards to their emotional or their physiological responses to those experiences. I meant to say before I latched onto the questions that I hope people truly appreciate how amazing Debbie is. I've been an admirer of her for a very long time, and everything she says is just so true and so experienced and so compassionate that I love listening to her talk whenever I can. And it just emphasizes that we don't need to reimagine a magical solution to understanding our animals, because there are laws of behavior and there are physiological responses to events, to our environment, be that the people you're working with or the physical environment. And so once we understand those contributing factors, fear and anxiety isn't so obscure. You can actually start to tweak out how we can help them, rather than having a blanket magic rule that will fix them, because every individual is individual and the way they cope and the environment they're in is different to the previous dog or cat that you spoke to or talked to.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the car, I think Nick might recognize horses and floats.
Yes.
Fear
Makes a lot
of
of sense.
travel float. I think that's probably even more of a problem than dogs getting into cars, but it's a very similar experience. There are different reasons as to why they would be fearful. We've got to understand that they are fearful. And so, yeah, going slowly, avoiding putting them in that car, avoiding them putting them in that environment until we've actually been able to provide them with the skills to cope better. And there are a couple more questions that have come through there. So Tanya wants some links, I think.
Yeah, so
And
definitely we'll send out the links in an email when we send out the link to the recording, so that's fine. And then there's a question about what is the first best step to help a dog with some separation anxiety?
I personally admit separation anxiety is one of the harder ones to work on. It really is, because it is quite invasive on the humans and the guardian's style of life, because the first step to separation anxiety is don't separate them. So avoid them experiencing that anxiety, which for some animals is a full-on panic attack. It's a full-on, and the first best step is do not let them continue to feel that way. And so give them an environment where they can feel happy and content. And realistically, for separation related conditions, that's they need to be with someone or something or some people or some dog, whatever it is they need to stave off that phobia. And then when you're moving on to the longer term steps, smaller bite-sized successes are the key. And you don't want to rush it, because it takes time for them to suddenly go, I'm alone and I'm okay. And it might be 10 seconds of that is the success. I think it's worth mentioning, and there was a comment earlier in one of the questions in regarding to using medication too much or maybe too many animals. But when we look at those true phobias like separation, myself and most of my colleagues do generally believe that without medication, you're really going to struggle to improve those anxiety attacks, and that you're far better to incorporate a medication review, assessment, and treatment to accompany the training program that you're doing. And it's also worth mentioning for some people, like separation anxiety, you didn't cause that. You didn't coddle them too much. You didn't do anything or not teach them to be alone. Okay, yes, there's things you can do to guard against it, but separation anxiety is a mental health disorder. It's a panic phobic response. And so a combination of appropriate medication, a joyful environment, and then a steady training program towards being comfortable to be alone is your best chance of success. So like most of our fearful dogs, there's no quick fix. And I think even just highlighting on Debbie's talk that you need to do repetitions of them getting it right. And that's 5 sessions of doing something really boring, like walking halfway around your dog and giving them a treat. People underestimate the benefit of those sorts of steps in helping their dogs cope in the long run. And that's going to give you the long-term resolution rather than maybe a quick resolution and a miserable dog. or a quick resolution and no resolution sort of thing. So I see we've got some more
Absolutely.
questions down
It
there.
all takes time. It's funny you should mention flock training, because flock training doesn't even start near the flock.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
some of our
exactly. I mean, it
dogs,
just
if
takes
you get
time.
we get within
Yeah.
we get within 2 meters of the car and they're like, oh, I'm not happy. And so that's our starting point. We're going to go and play ball 2 meters next to the car. And then tomorrow we'll go 2 meters and 1 centimeter closer to the car. And it is very much about understanding all the back chaining events, all the previous precursors that tell them something bad is going to be happen. And that can go as far back as, oh, if you get that particular lead or that particular harness or those particular shoes, bad stuff is going to happen and I don't want that. So I think as much as it's frustrating to the guardians wanting to get on with her life, you're going to have a better resolution if we identify these earlier subtle signs of fear and anxiety and go, oh, okay, I see there's some discomfort there. Let's help you through that, rather than having to deal with the full-blown panic attacks, which does take a lot longer to do. So
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. All right, we're actually out of time, but thank you so much,
that was
Jess,
quick.
for helping
I
me
talked too much. I'm sorry.
of these questions. No, that was great. No, thank you so much. And also, again, thank you so much to Debbie for her presentation. And thank you for everyone that's still here for the conclusion of our series. So if you really enjoyed this series and would like to see a season 3 next year, please let us know in the chat now, or send us an email at welfare@companionanimals.nz. And the recording of tonight's webinar will be available soon on the CAN's YouTube channel. So please feel free to share that with others. And finally, if you found these sessions and the series valuable and would like to support our work, please consider donating on our donations page, which you can find on our website. Just every contribution helps us continue to offer these free education and animal welfare resources. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.